Environmental Affairs Committee. And Madam Clerk, please note that all three members are present. And I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the May meeting.
So moved. Second.
Awesome. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. All right, we will jump right in. We have two items today for discussion. As a reminder to the public, one of the things that we have requested from our animal services team is consistent updates as we continue to refine and improve our processes. And so our first agenda item is to receive that update from Ms. Victoria Riles, our superintendent.
Good afternoon, thank you. So we'll be going over a few ordinance and operational updates. We are starting with just a recap of our fiscal year that just ended for 23-24. You'll see here on these charts some good news that intake and euthanasia rates are down. Unfortunately, nationwide, outcomes are also, they've been very stagnant just across the country. This is data provided to us by Animal Shelters Count, which is a platform that collects data from shelters across the country. But we still ended very strong. We had an intake of just over 4,600 animals with a live release rate of 85% collectively for the whole year.
And I see it's still around, what, 65, 66% from the county, 30
We
from
ended
us.
this year with a 66% intake from Richland County.
And when you say outcomes, you mean like resulting in an adoption or they're rescued or surrender? Okay.
Yeah, so in these pie charts here, we actually separated live outcomes from euthanasia. So you'll see that we had a 16% euthanasia rate, and live outcomes, they encompass anything from adoption, rescue, TNR efforts, let me see, I believe, and return to owner.
Okay.
This is good, Victoria. I mean, just even the percentage of euthanasia has dropped down, so really good, well done.
CAS, which is referred to as Columbia Animal Services, is making great strides. We have mimicked a lot of programs from Charleston and Greenville, which are organizations that operate at a higher volume. They have more personnel, but we are adopting every program that we can to increase life saving.
I do want to mention one other thing, Dr. Busses, if I could. We had a conversation with Fort Jackson yesterday about intergovernmental service agreements. They're wanting to revisit those in a variety of different things. I know we've got one already in place, I believe, for animal services.
We have one that's expired, but I also have Victoria's comments on that. I'll get with you on that.
Great. I think during the month of September, there's an opportunity to revisit that, and I think they're open to making any changes. Obviously, sounds like it's expired, so anyway, they're open to that.
And we have an intergovernmental MOU of some kind with the county.
We do.
Do they give funds towards this? Remind me.
Victoria, you might have.
Well, the contract with Fort Jackson is, no. Oh, the county, yes, we're charging the county per animal per day for straight holds. They are not contributing to the life-saving outcome ends of
What
operation.
about overhead costs of the shelter?
They're contributing based on animal per day for just the straight hold, so it is covering personnel as well.
Okay.
So we get a compensation for the mandatory hold period. If we hold the animal beyond that for adoption purposes, they're not paying for that, even if that animal originated from the county.
Right. So, and I think that's what I'm getting at is the burden and ramifications of the number of animals that we're managing goes beyond the mandatory hold, right? So as we have future kind of MOU contract negotiations, similar to some of the other services that we share with the county, I think it's worth looking at that formula or structure of how we're funding, given that we have the data that we are providing services for all of the county, much more so. And so I'd like to see the funding be a little bit more proportionate.
Would you also mention the CPI increases?
Yeah, we did just recently, based on the CPI increase, the per cost per day.
Oh, you did increase it.
County.
Okay, that's great.
We're
Okay.
at CPI increase every year.
Random question. I'm looking at that number in 2008, where it was the highest ever, I believe, for intakes. When times get tough financially, do we see increase
Oh, sure,
Thanks.
absolutely. Even right now, I think we're not sure exactly what's going on with the national trends. 2023 was a particularly hard year for municipal shelters across the entire country. It could be post-COVID. I think everybody got used to the shutdown during COVID, so you didn't see a lot of intake. Individuals were staying home, adoption rates were increasing. So this could be a combination of absolutely some economic hardship combined with things regulating post-COVID.
Thank you.
Rev,
Yes, sir.
Ken?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me ask you a quizzitive question. Comparatively, what's the euthanasia rate comparatively in nationwide as composed to citywide? I understand that it's decreasing, but what does the numbers look like?
I can tell you that the national rate of live release, according to Animal Shelters Count, is 92% currently. They would have liked to see that number increase since intake and euthanasia are down. But again, the trends are just showing that outcomes are not increasing as intakes and euthanasia decrease, meaning every animal's length of stay, particularly with large dogs, is increasing. So animals are sitting stagnant. But nationally, there's a 92% live release rate.
Thank you.
Don't know if maybe from this one.
is that where you want to go?
I think so, yes. So before we dive into some operational updates, we'll just recap some ordinance proposals. As we've been talking about, we would like to see a modification to the city's differential licensing ordinance. We are proposing a one-time lifetime pet license for anyone who has a fully vetted animal to include spay or neuter, rabies vaccine, and a microchip with a $100 annual fee if otherwise. And again, this is to incentivize spay and neuter without making it a mandated requirement. We feel we will get more compliance from pet owners this way. It also creates better outreach to under-resourced communities. Since we have proposed this, we have soft launched the online pet licensing portal. There's one small glitch within that portal during the soft launch that was being tested, and corrective action has been taken this week. So we are preparing for a hard launch next week. Even with the soft launch, we're seeing daily pet licenses come through. So we've already done over 65 within the last couple of weeks of the soft launch.
And when you do the hard launch, it would be great if you could go connect with maybe community development and like the listserv we have of all the neighborhoods. Because a lot of those neighborhoods also have dog parks. And they have access to those lists of all the pet owners, and that would be an easy way to get some of that done. I know, like, for example, Noma Bark Park, they just register them for you, but there could be an opportunity there to get some folks registered.
I think another good outreach, Victoria and Robert knows, the Columbia Council of Neighborhoods has been, we've done a Columbia Water update. We did a forestry update at their last meeting, and they've also inquired about animal services. So I think that's another great message to get out to them.
Absolutely. We have been expanding some of the messaging for the PFR program through the community meetings as well. So we will absolutely exercise those efforts. Another modification to this ordinance would be the removal of the spay and neuter exemption at subsection C for service animal. This ordinance encompasses 3 spay neuter exemptions for impounded pets. And we've seen a lot of individuals find loopholes in the ADA legalities that are allowing them to get their animals out unaltered. We're requesting to remove this because true service animals are already altered. So most of the time, this is not an animal that's falling under what the ordinance was written for so many years ago, which were true service animals. There's been a lot of development of emotional support animals. And with the ADA laws, there are, again, a lot of individuals who are utilizing this exemption to get their animal out unaltered.
And legal is cool with that?
So all of these proposals that we're discussing today are going to go to legal for
Okay.
draft write-ups. We have been communicating with Richland County about hoping that they would make the same changes to their differential licensing ordinance. At this time, it does not look like they have, but the city does wish to move forward regardless.
I think it's important to note that Richland County was just going through, or has just gone through a revision to their ordinances to modernize them a bit. We talked about differential licensing that didn't make the cut. They plan to revisit, that's what staff is telling us, but they're a ways away from doing that. And our original plan was to do it together with the county. Since that didn't make their last group of ordinance revisions, we think it would show leadership if we go ahead, we can start making an impact, and then maybe that pulls them along to doing what we're doing as well.
I disagree, but I mean, I do think that we have typically been the leader. What I don't want to happen is that we end up doing the right thing, they don't, and then, you know, once again, our constituents see it as, oh, it's easier to live in the county, I don't have to do this. Right, so,
Safer to live in the city with dogs.
well, we do have a councilman that serves on our joint Richland City of Columbia committee, and I would like to request him to get this bumped up on the list of, I mean, I just think if we're gonna do it, let's do it right, and this is, I think, pretty straightforward. It's not a very, I mean, I don't wanna say controversial because you never know what can become controversial, but it seems like it's something that's gonna benefit everyone. So if you could maybe leverage some of your relationships and see if it's something that maybe a council member can kind of take under their wing to get up, I would ideally like that by the time this goes through legal, that we are on the same page.
I'm happy to do so.
Thank you.
We'll keep pushing on the staff end. I think some of the ordinance revisions they made were perceived as controversial, and and I don't want to speak for the county, but I think they just didn't want to take this step quite yet, but we'll keep pushing as well. And Victoria, I think the marching orders, go ahead and route things through legal. Let's get ready,
Absolutely.
and then.
And in the meantime, would they consider also using the same pet licensing online software? Like, that's not an ordinance change, is it?
No, I believe they have an online licensing option
Okay,
already.
okay, great.
It may be a conversation worth revisiting as well, but I know Lexington County is looking at implementing a licensing requirement. It's been a little while since we've had those conversations, but it could be an opportunity to have all three once again get on the same page. I don't believe all three entities have implemented an ordinance consistent since the TNR Community Cat Program.
And then we have our legislative affairs folks here, so if we can write that down for some of our regional policy stuff, that would be great. Okay.
So just a few other quick ordinance modifications. For our animal care generally ordinance, we are wanting to implement language for animal abandonment. Right now, that only exists on a state level. We do not have anything to protect the animals that are frequently left in the dog park or at large in neighborhoods. So we're wanting to create that and tighten parameters for outdoor housing and protection from the elements. So right now, our general care ordinance is pretty vague. It says that animals must be provided with wholesome food and water and shelter, but it doesn't actually define what the adequate shelter is or what temperatures are appropriate for outside housing. So we would like to add that language. Restraint or confinement of dogs, we want to improve our tethering language to, again, highlight what's an appropriate temperature for outside tethering. We would also like to make modifications to the amount of time an animal is legally allowed to be tethered and apply a restriction from intact and heat females being tethered outside. And the last ordinance change would be to implement an ordinance prohibiting the sale of animals in any public right-of-way or property, as we currently do not have language for that either.
Victoria, whenever this gets to the point that it's at a place that you guys like, could you have the team just pull what the differences are between Lexington, Richland, and ours?
Yes.
Because I think that would be helpful for us in terms of some of the,
Yeah, we will provide all of that. We've pulled a lot of our tethering suggestions from Lexington County, and some of the changes that Richland County just made to their animal care general highlight the specifications that we are mimicking as well.
okay.
May we go next? I'm not sure that my clicker is working. Thank you. So for a few operational updates since our last meeting, the shelter has successfully launched a home-to-home program. Home to Home is essentially a platform that allows a pet owner to create a profile for their pet with the intent of rehoming their pet within the community before bringing it to a shelter. So we have actually made it a requirement for anyone wanting to rehome their pet to utilize this platform first. And during the wait time of their appointment, our caseworkers at the shelter are managing the site to see how many inquiries the pet owner has received from individuals within the community who are interested in taking on their pet. Thus far, we have 83 active profiles on this platform, and 15 animals have already been successfully rehomed within the community versus shelter impoundment. This is a model that we adopted from Greenville, and it seems very promising. Last year, they did redirect 1,600 animals, I believe, were their statistics from shelter impoundment. So we're hoping to see great success from this program. And we have also taken on the effort to offer free microchipping events to the community. We did host 3 this past summer with another upcoming microchip event that will be taking place on September 22nd. It is limited to city residents, and this is a part of the Best Friends Home to Home Grant Challenge, which would essentially, we have already met a lot of requirements for the grant, but hosting this event is another requirement that we could ultimately receive a $10,000 grant from fulfilling. And Pet Fix and Return, as we mentioned last time, is something that we are still operating on a very small scale due to limited resources, but we have recently applied for the Better Cities for Pet grant to fund this program. This is a program that would nicely tie in with the differential licensing ordinance change, as that licensing, if your pet is spayed, neutered, vaccinated, and microchipped, you get a one-time lifetime license, and the Pet Fix and Return program will offer all of those services for free to individuals in under-resourced communities. And we developed this from, again, the national data that shows majority of individuals in these under-resourced communities want services. They just don't have the means to receive them, whether it be transportation, finances. So we are, as already being a certified Better Cities for Pets city, Columbia already had the leg up on the application, and we have recently submitted that. And last but not least, it looks very promising that we will be receiving some grant funds from the Petco Love Foundation. So we have submitted requests highlighting areas that we could improve operations, whether it be through manpower or equipment, to their foundation. And we're expecting to hear results of whether or not we would receive anything between October and December.
Any other questions or comments?
No, for me.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move into a planted wildlife gardens ordinance update. Ms. Jessica Kennard.
Thank you.
And this was what the mayor referred.
Yes, this is a referral from the mayor. I'm Jessica Kynard, Senior Assistant City Attorney. And so this is a referral from the mayor, from constituents that contacted him saying that they have or are interested in planting environmentally friendly gardens that may not fit in the nuisance regulations with the ordinances. And so they have suggested some ordinance modifications that we have reviewed in legal, as well as other portions of our ordinances. So those are the packets. The highlighted page referring to 8-301, et cetera, that shows the suggestions that were made, and legal approves of all of these, such that
Can you just step back for a second and just
Absolutely.
let us know, like, what would be a real world example of what's happening and how the ordinance is in conflict with like practice?
Okay. And we have some people who have requested that, so they may be able to speak to that a little bit more detail, but my understanding is some of these, for example, plants grow over the height allowed by the city. They might appear bushier in nature, things like that, to help pollinators, to help natural habitats and things like that. So they're things that ultimately benefit the environment, but they might not fit into the aesthetic portions of our ordinance.
Got it, okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
No,
So we were trying to figure out the way to make a most feasible exception to allow these gardens. And the way, well, to transfer just 1 second, the other page you have section 5-151. Those are city modifications to the International Property Maintenance Code. And the high point there is section C, where we already have an exception allowing cultivated flowers and gardens to be accepted from the definition of weeds. So we have that in place, and we were trying to figure out the best way to look toward enforcement of this and make it easier for code enforcement, like when they see what they may think is an overgrown garden, how do we make it easier for them to know that that's actually a cultivated garden? And so we've reached out to the constituents who are also here to speak, and the idea that we came up with is to certify them somehow. And there are different organizations that they can speak to better than I can that would say, yes, this is actually a habitat or a cultivated garden. It's supposed to look like this. Please don't tear it down. So we could create a list of these certified habitats by different organizations. Habitats is the wrong word, gardens. So if code enforcement gets a complaint about 123 Park Street, then they'll be like, oh wait, that's actually a cultivated garden.
Okay.
Okay, so the legal is happy with the way the ordinance states. We just think it's, with the suggestions made by the constituents to edit that ordinance. We just need to figure out, agree, well, y'all do, the best way to certify or qualify these gardens when it comes to creating that kind of list.
Has there been any research done on what other cities are doing?
Jessica, have we looked into that yet? I don't know that.
We have a little bit. A lot of times you hear about this with HOAs and POAs. I know many of those have certified gardens, certified plantings to get accepted out of their restrictive covenants regarding lawns. So this would not be an innovative ordinance change.
And so the HOAs would be in charge of giving that certification? Like, how would a code enforcement know that it's been certified? They've gone through the process. What is the process? That's what I'm trying to say.
That I don't know the details of about what is the process. My assumption is they would go to these organizations, whichever organization that we say is the certifying body. They would come out and look at their planting or, talk about what it is, and then they would get a sign, anticipate a sign, or be added to a list that code enforcement or whatever appropriate party could keep to say that these are certified gardens.
Will there be a fee associated with that?
That's something we can discuss. I don't know if there would need to be, because I don't think there's really any city energy going into it other than maintaining a list. If the third-party organization is the one that's doing the certifying.
This may have been before my time, but wasn't there a conversation with these goats that would like maul down?
Why do you have to say it like that?
Well,
All down.
using goats as to, I guess, cut grass in areas,
Yeah.
right? Are they allowed to do that here?
They are. We recently passed an ordinance, I think, beginning of the year maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, they're doing it right now.
Really? And so with these goats, are there any certification process to make sure this is a real goat that can actually? There is.
I think it's a specific contractor that we use.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at, there seems to be some sort of analogous framework for different uses of creative things, whether it's the vegetation or animals for.
Sure.
That's interesting. Okay.
I'm curious, how many locations do we think we have right now in the city that would fall under this type of certification?
That I do not know. They would be able to speak. Ms. German, would you be willing to come up and answer some questions?
Well, actually, there's three of us here, and I
Okay.
think all three of us, because
Absolutely.
all three of us have different pieces of the answer. We appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Introduce yourself for the record too, thank you.
I'm Trish German. I'm on the board of the Midlands chapter of the South Carolina Native Plant Society,
I'm Bailey Parker. I'm Executive Director of Gills Creek Watershed Association.
and on the board of Audubon as well.
Columbia
She's a-
Audubon
she's a
Society.
twofer.
I'm Sarah Green. I'm the Executive Director of the South Carolina Wildlife Federation.
And this came up as a result, I'm sorry, this came up as a result of several members of the Native Plant Society having wonderful, lush, wildlife-friendly gardens with seed heads that are feeding birds and so on, getting citations, and initially being told, you got to chop it all down. After conversation, the ordinance people understood and they were calmer about it. And one of the things that I think helped in those cases, I know you would like it to be very simple and straightforward for the ordinance people, and we understand that. But sort of in the parlance of this kind of stuff, there are things called cues to care. So if there's a pathway, if you've got signage, if you have borders, bird baths, things that indicate that this is a plan and not just you went on vacation and forgot to come back. Those things also can be used. And we would be more than happy to talk to the ordinance people about here's what to look for, here's why, here's the theory behind it. But in answer to the question about the certifications, there are several different certifications that are possibilities. The Wildlife Federation has for decades, I guess, had a backyard wildlife habitat program. And South Carolina has a more specific one, which Sarah will, she's got a sign that's even prettier than your sign.
I did bring a sign, yes. I think we're affiliated with the National Wildlife Federation, and they handle a lot of the certification, and we help people at the state level use native plants that are appropriate for our state and appropriate for our wildlife that we have here in our state. And so we have these signs that after a yard is certified, they can get these signs for their yard. So that's an easy way to tell that a yard has been certified. And I have some brochures that we hand out that kind of list certain plants that you can use and that kind of thing. And it has an application in it as well, so you can see our certification process. So I'm happy to hand those out to y'all as well, so.
A native garden that if you could just point one out, that may have driven us.
USC's Arboretum.
Go to Saluda Riverwalk.
Okay.
The Midlands chapter of the South Carolina Native Plant Society recently used a grant from Dominion to install a native plant garden right in front of the ranger station there at the City of Columbia's Saluda Riverwalk. Those are plants that are native. They did evolve here in this space, but most of them are actually cultivars of those native plants so that they behave a little better in a landscaped setting. So they serve the same purpose. They do benefit wildlife, but they might have a little more compact growth habit, may have a little less likelihood to put out runners and take over.
And another good spot, if you feel like a walk in the woods, the USC Arboretum over on the edge of Shandon is sort of trying to recreate what Shandon looked like before we all moved in. And they have an open house every, third Sunday afternoon or fourth Sunday afternoon? I think it's every third Sunday afternoon. It's lovely. The other certification program that is specific to Columbia and Richland County is Gills Creek.
So Gills Creek Watershed Association launched our Watershed Champion yard certification program early last year. So there are many yard certification programs. Ours has a water quality slant to it, which can be a little, technical for folks, but really what we want to do is catch rainwater where it falls. And those of us who live in and around Columbia, I think, have all experienced issues with flooding or issues with polluted water. So our program encourages property owners to include things like rain gardens in their yard. And rain gardens have to have native plants in them. The plants help to absorb the water, but the roots of the plants also go deep down in the soil. So they improve erosion issues, and the roots actually help to draw water down into the soil, where it recharges the groundwater, decreases the need for irrigation. So it's less of an impact on our municipal water system, and that's less water going into the street, less water going into the creeks, and less pollution entering that water system as well.
And a rain garden could be interpreted as weeds if someone didn't
Yes,
realize. So
those-
that's why the
it
rain
is-
garden is
It is
important.
not just a basin with mown grass. It is native
Lush.
plants, grasses, rushes, flowers. Yep.
In answer to your question, Mr. Bailey, about a cost, there is not a cost to the city, I presume, but there is a cost to people who get these signs. So we didn't want you to think that there was no cost.
That's what I was wondering, if
They
there
pay
was,
for the sign.
if I wanted to start a native garden in my backyard, would there be an organization I could go to who could come out there, view it, and then say, yeah, this is a neighbor garden, pay us $50 and here's your sign, and then you let the city know, you submit your license to the city showing that it's a neighbor garden. It has to be renewed every year or so.
Right. Well, our organization does not come out to your yard, but they just, you can fill out the application that's in the brochure there and mail it in. And then you receive a certificate in the mail or just a electronic one that you can print out. And so you don't have to buy. There's a $20 fee to apply. And so the certificate comes with that certification. And then these signs are $25 in addition to the application fee.
Does anybody have any idea how many violations we put out there for people who had native gardens? Anybody have a clue about that information?
We know of 3 personally.
3 people?
who are in our group.
Yeah, just recently, actually, in the last 12 months, probably.
Were those in neighborhoods?
North Main, Elmwood.
Just off North Main, and one was over in Rosewood. One is, I don't know what you call the area where Emily Bryan is, down close to the hangar. And
Kilburn, maybe South Kilburn area.
maybe, yeah.
Do y'all have any idea if their cases have been heard yet? By, I guess,
One has been resolved. One is, I think, in the process of getting sorted out. And one is some argument over how a drainage ditch adjacent to the property is being handled and whose responsibility it is. And I don't even begin to understand how that is playing out.
So probably single digits per 12 months. And then, but a way to logistically to clean up the potential conflict in ordinance and then to give David Hatcher's folks a list, make it clean for them. That would help, I think, maybe make things a lot easier for them. So we could avoid some of these conflicts that I think are probably worked out once the conversation happens. It just,
It's horrifying to someone.
It would
Good, and it's.
it would eliminate some angst and fear.
But I think that organization would be the ones that would certify. We would not have to certify. And then they could report to us the certified gardens that could be cross-referenced by code enforcement.
and so in the proposed ordinance, does it say that it has to be certified native garden in there? I haven't read the
Not
ordinance.
currently, but it absolutely.
You can sit at the table, Jessica, it
Thanks.
makes it easier.
That is certainly something that we anticipate including in there, if that is the way that y'all want to go, to say you must be certified by one of these organizations in order to become one of the exempt properties, for lack of a better word.
I feel like that would be a good addition, but
Maybe like a reputable organization, rather than naming, I know y'all are all very reputable. But I'm saying like 50 years from now, 100 years from now, if there's
Sure.
another organization.
Yeah, that I can play with that language. We can see what works best. Yeah,
yeah.
Some third-party certification.
third party reputable certification, wildlife. Yeah.
Well, I learned something new today. I like it.
Happy to talk more about it outside of this room if you would like to. We're very passionate about it.
Gardens, dogs, this is such a fun committee.
About your backyard.
Well, thank y'all for being here.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Well, appreciate everyone's time. I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 1:35. We're gonna wait for some language back. Yeah, and then before we take it to council. Yep.
It doesn't have to come back here though, does it?
I think it does.
Okay.
I think it could be quick. Like
I mean, you can also just send it to us via email.
Yeah.
We can do it as a committee and then we can send it up to.
Thank you.
Great.